Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your Resource for Success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, and welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have two special guests, Annetta Benjamin and Jodie Hansohn. Annetta Benjamin, owner of Benjamin Counseling Center, LLC, and author of 5 Helpers, 5 Hurts, a guide to improve your thoughts and feelings. Ms. Benjamin has a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in pastoral counseling, both from Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia. Received her clinical license as a professional counselor and certification as a national counselor in the state of Virginia. She specializes in counseling children, adolescents, and young adults with behavior, academic, self-esteem, coping, communication, bereavement, eating, and anger issues. She also counsels adults, couples, and the elderly with spiritual, bereavement, communication, family, relationship, depression, self-esteem, body image, and anxiety concerns. Miss Jodie Hansohn is a wife and a mother, married for 18 years, and her son is 17 years old, and she is bipolar, but it does not have her. Through many years of counseling, she learned to manage and succeed with the illness. From 2011 to 2020, she went to therapy and learned to thrive with her counselor, Miss Benjamin. Now she coaches with Miss Benjamin to help bring awareness to clients and mental health professionals of how to succeed with the bipolar illness. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Miss Annetta Benjamin and Jodie Hansohn. Hello, ladies.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you both on. We're going to be talking about something very, very important this evening, but yet still, we want people to realize that you still have a normal life. And I am so excited to hear about how you two have been brought together to start this journey that you are on. But before we dive into that, I would love for you both to tell us a little bit more about who Annetta Benjamin is, and then, of course, a little bit more about who Jodie Hansohn is. So, Annetta, please tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you, Kim. And yes, we're both excited to be with you today. But a little background on myself, born and raised in Alexandria, Virginia, and decided to set roots with my career in Virginia, too. So I do have a practice in Woodbridge, Virginia, and I just celebrated 10 years in practice. And then I met Mrs. Hansohn while I was working. She was actually one of my first clients that I had when I opened up the practice. So we've been together for many, many years, and I'm so excited about the things that we're creating. In addition to the clinical side, I'm also a mother. I have a 12-year-old son, and he's going on 13, but may think he's 18. Mm-hmm. So I'm enjoying that process of raising a soon-to-be teenager.
All right. And Jodie?
Yes, Kimberly, thank you so much for having me here. And wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you or Miss Benjamin, so thank you. I also am from the Woodbridge area, born in D.C. and born and raised here in the Woodbridge area. As you previously said, I am a wife. I am a mother. I also have a 17-year-old who is soon to turn 18 next month. And I do have the bipolar illness, and I have a passion for correcting the misunderstanding of the bipolar illness and to continue to help realize that people can live with the illness, be healthy, and have a healthy marriage and raise a healthy child, because I am the success of that.
All right. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm excited to learn more about the beginning. And like you said, Annetta, you have been in business now for 10 years, and congratulations on your 10-year anniversary. I know it's exciting. What you are doing is amazing for our community, and to talk about where you came from to where you're at. Let's tell the listeners a little bit more about that portion of your journey. And then, because you guys have come together in these 10 years, you, like I say, she was one of your first clients. So tell our listeners a little bit more about how you got started, and then how you two became who you are today and how you started and then how we got into where we are today.
Sure. Well, a little bit about my journey just into starting my practice. I had worked for several other practices before I decided to step out on my own, but I kind of recognized I was being an independent counselor anyway, because the practices that I worked at, I was doing my own billing, I was doing my own progress notes, scheduling clients, but I just wasn't earning 100% of the income. And then I realized, I could be doing this on my own. So I was working for a practice, and my mentor, who's actually my coach now, and it's kind of neat because we'll probably talk about how that comes full circle with me and Jodie, but she helped me start my practice, and her name is Kathy Bornoff, and I really sat down with her, and she kind of gave me the ins and outs of starting my own practice while I was still working for her, which is very rare because, nowadays everyone is so competitive. They don't want to share their secrets or, how they've, been successful. But she was willing to sit down with me and kind of give me all of her, tools and information about how to get started. So I looked up different places and rented a one kind of maybe a very tiny office. It didn't even have a window. And that's how I began. But I was blessed because the clients that I had before, I had a good amount that followed me, but I also gained new clients once I started, and one of them was Mrs. Hansohn. And, it was a challenge because before I was working with mainly children, and so Mrs. Hansohn was one of my first individual adults that I've worked with, but it's kind of neat because we've been able to grow together, me as a therapist and her as a client, and she has an amazing story, and and not because she has an illness, but just her consistency, her character, her integrity. You just don't see that a lot in people, these days, especially someone with mental illness too.
Right. Yeah. And, so when you talk about your journey in the beginning, how you start out trying to figure out what it is we want to do when we grow up, so to speak, and then you realize that what you were doing was not exactly where you wanted to be. And then you dived into wanting to get into this profession. And then, of course, we all know that when we first come in, we think everybody's going to come to our doorstep and we're going to be, great and successful overnight. But obviously, it takes years to build. But when you can have an individual that comes into your practice and needs your services, and you guys have built this relationship that's almost unheard of, not because it's this situation of the client versus the medical, all the clinical side of it. People always have that worriness about, well, should they be friends, or should this something you should be doing in your practice? But talk to us about how you guys got beyond just the clinical side and became friends. So, and then you can tell your story portion of it, but then Jodie, I really want you to dive in and tell our listeners all about you and how you have blended in with Annetta.
Sure. Right. And, we definitely are very close and respect for each other, but we still keep the guidelines of, professional and like client. But Mrs. Hansohn has just grown past that to where we're on the level of just coaching now, where a lot of my clients haven't reached that level to where they are starting to, master their illness and be able to teach about it. But Mrs. Hansohn has, really shown over the years that she's dedicated, she's coachable, she's teachable, and I just found her inspiring for myself. And I said, what, this is pretty cool. The same things that my mentor and coach, Kathy, had taught me, I feel like she's ready for that level. And so it was about 2018 we got started with coaching, because when we first met, I believe back in 2011, she had talked about, wanting to, write a book and tell her story and teach on it, to even therapists and other providers. But, it's a pretty long shot, especially when you're still struggling with your illness. But over the years, she's proven worthy to be able to, not only master her illness, but teach it too.
Mm-hmm. So when you are in a situation like this, like you said, you keep the two separate, but to see that somebody has that much dedication and then you guys decided to move towards this counseling portion of it. The thing I loved about what you just said was that she was coachable. And I think that's, the most important part on anybody, whether they have an illness or not, is that if you don't have the capability to want to learn and to listen to what others have, it's harder to move forward. But obviously, as you said, Miss Jodie has definitely put in the years and the time and the effort in order for you guys to decide that in 2018 you wanted to build this new counseling program. So Jodie, tell us your story.
Sure, thank you. Well, Miss Benjamin has inspired me through the years of counseling, which has been a lot of hard work. And by her inspiration with me, she helped me learn the correct tools. And with those correct tools, I was able to continue to live a healthy life with the illness. And when we got started, I also knew that I wanted to always teach it. But in order to teach it, you have to follow everything that your counselor tells you. You have to live your life the way you're supposed to. That means staying medicated properly. That means not putting yourself involved with other activities, whether it should be mixing drugs or alcohol or both. Again, I've had to raise a child. I've also had to be a wife. And that's not easy for somebody with an illness. But I have each and every day, every week, and every year successfully shown that I can do it, and I do master my illness. And I was given this blessing of an opportunity to teach this, and I still, to this day, am blessed that I'm doing this. It's just a miracle that this has happened.
So can one of you explain to me, or both of you, what bipolar illness is so that our listeners understand what it means clinically, but then also what it means as a personal individual, what you go through every day and how it affects your life. And so then we'll come back around to how the counseling helped all that, and then into the journey of the coaching program that you guys have.
Right, and I'll kind of start off with the clinical part, and then Mrs. Hansohn can explain, what she goes through as well. But clinically, it's a mood disorder that, causes you to have different fluctuations in your emotions, where you may experience a lot of anxiety, depression, and also rage. And when you have a collective of symptoms that range from 6 to 12 symptoms, they will diagnose you with the bipolar disorder. But you normally do have to be medicated to be able to sustain your emotions and to keep them regulated. You also have to maintain your nutrition and eating habits, sleeping habits, and that's something Mrs. Hansohn has mastered. But I'll allow her to explain what she has and what she was diagnosed with.
Jodie?
Yes, thank you. So as Ms. Benjamin stated, the illness does have different mood disorders. I do have bipolar 1. Unfortunately, I do suffer with symptoms of both bipolar 1 and 2. And those symptoms include a range of happy, sad, anger, anxiety, rage, and tearfulness. And what I have learned to do is I've learned to tackle each and every emotion that this bipolar causes, which is the chemical balance. In that chemical balance, you must learn to understand your medications, to understand how to take your medications correctly. You must understand to make life choices. You cannot drink. You cannot do drugs. You cannot live a lifestyle of staying up at night and not sleeping the next day. You have to have a regimen daily in order to be healthy. And I have focused on that. And I take one day at a time, and every day gets better, and you become successful. And my motto has always been, there's no excuses for you to not take care of yourself.
Yeah, and you're right. And the key is, and it's not even because you have bipolar, it's just taking care of yourself, period. And we all have excuses for the reasons why we don't do the things that we do. And, you know, there's many people who have never been diagnosed and they do horrible things, or they just do things that they shouldn't be doing. And it's not about having a mental illness, but like you said, it's about caring enough about who you are, and you've mastered that and you're teaching other people that. But how many years, Jodie, had it been before you actually became diagnosed with bipolar illness?
I did not find out until, so my husband and I have been married 18 years. I did not find out until 2 years into our dating, and then right when we got married. So when I found out, it was something I had to unfortunately share with my husband and allow him to decide if he wanted to have a person in his life with that illness. And I was very blessed that he was willing to accept me and take me for who I was. And although I think I've always known, probably since I was about 10 or 11 years of age, that I've had the illness, because I have struggled with many of the different symptoms. And I've never been level until I was able to find out that I had a problem, got diagnosed, and then started tackling my different issues.
So, Annetta, when you're treating bipolar illnesses, how do you go about the self-identification portion? And then give us some tips on what you would do to help them get through the process of living a regular life from day to day.
Yes, well, normally when I do have a client who has this illness, they're normally diagnosed before they come into therapy, normally by their psychiatrist, or maybe they've had an evaluation by their psychologist. And so I'm normally getting a history from their psychiatrist of what's been going on. But once that person is in therapy, we're working on the coping skills, self-awareness first, which is big, knowing their triggers or the things that will cause, them to rage or cause them to feel depressed or down. And it's kind of really learning about themselves. And once they develop that awareness, then they can learn to manage it. Because you can be aware, but then actually helping yourself is a whole nother ball game.
Right.
And that's something Mrs. Hansohn has, worked on tremendously over the years. She was aware, but then managing it, became difficult at times. But once again, her persistence, her dedication to, staying committed to therapy, which is something I don't see across the board, with a lot of my clients, they're in for a couple months and then they kind of step out, or in 1 year in a way. But Mrs. Hansohn has stayed consistent over these 10 years with managing her moods and regulation. And I think that's why she has gotten to this point where, she has mastered it and can teach it. But, mastering it doesn't mean that you're without issues or problems.
Right.
It's just you're aware and you know what to do to help yourself.
Right, exactly. So, like I said, I was listening to how you were talking about that 10 years is definitely a long time for any individual to stay that close into working with their counselor and then working with themselves. Like you said, there are many people who come and go in thinking that, hey, well, I'm healed, I don't need to come back and do anything else, because they feel that they've mastered it. But the reality is there is no mastering it. It's a constant day-to-day process. Every day you have to acknowledge when you're not happy, or acknowledge when something is going wrong, acknowledge when something is going right. So, I think the thing that I'm hearing, and even though bipolar illness is very important, do you find, Annetta, that there are many people who've never been diagnosed, but still have a lot of these same symptoms that just, and especially kind of backtracking to what we've been going through for the last year or more, with the pandemic and everything, people are becoming more depressed, more kids are becoming more depressed. I mean, it seems like to be this vicious cycle of individuals not understanding how to handle how they feel because of the changes in their lives. So what are you seeing in that perspective, and what may be some advice that you could give to some of the listeners who may be feeling that way today?
Right. Yeah. And definitely there's been a significant increase in mental health illnesses, over the past year, and some change with the pandemic. And, if we look deeply into the bipolar illness, you'll find that most people have a symptom or two of it anyway, but it's just the persistence and the duration of the symptoms that would either classify you as, with the disorder or not.
Mm-hmm.
But across the board, I have seen a lot more people reaching out due to anxiety and depression, which seems to be the two biggest disorders that have been increasing over the past year, and especially with the adolescents, because I think the adjustment with not being able to be in school, not being able to socialize, it has really caused a lot of people to feel down, and I've seen an increase for parents reaching out to get help for their kids who may are experiencing depressive symptoms
Mm-hmm.
and isolation or thoughts of self-harming or suicide.
Wow. Yeah. And you hear more and more about it on the news. As a matter of fact, I just was listening to it before we even got on, that there's so much more of this going on with the children because their lives have been totally rearranged, in more than a year, and everybody's trying to cope in their own different way. So I want to talk more about the program that you guys have developed. So Jodie, why don't you tell the listeners about what awareness are you bringing to clients about mental health, about bipolar illness?
Thank you. So what we've tried to do together, Ms. Benjamin and I, through the years of successfully mastering my tools and my triggers, is to teach that when dealing with the illness, that there is success, and that the opportunity to understand that it is a choice to take care of yourself. It is a choice to choose to act out. It is a choice to go to counseling. It's a choice to, for example, not pay your copay bill, and then you become overwhelmed with out-of-pocket expenses because you chose to not go to your meetings. Those are all choices that you make, and those are choices that benefit you for your daily needs with your illness. And to bring awareness is to talk about and identify that why would you not want to take care of yourself? Why would you not want to go to counseling? Mm-hmm. Why do you not want to better yourself? Face your fears. I can't speak specifically for people that do drugs because that's a totally out of my element to understand that. Mm-hmm. However, my heart does go out for those people. I do understand the desire to want to have a drink and feel great, but I know factually that it can set you back 2-3 days or maybe not even catch up to you for another week. And then you could have an outburst, and that outburst could set you back for a month, 2 months. It's not worth it. And bringing awareness to people that want to harm themselves. If mm-hmm. you can get your triggers under control and you can be confident in your illness, and you can also then address every issue you might have, whether it's one issue to 10 issues mm-hmm. to 40 issues. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen overnight. It took me 10 years to master it. But I did it, and I've never believed in wanting to harm myself or kill myself. That's not an excuse. Mm-hmm. You have to face your problems. They do get better, and life is hard. The illness multiplies it. But if you can tackle it, you're normal. You can be normal by tackling these issues.
Okay. Well, let me ask mm-hmm. you this question, and I'm sure you've heard this before. What do you say to people who say, well, you don't understand how I feel. How can you help me? What do you say to those individuals? Because I'm sure that there are many people who have gone through other issues and it kind of all bottled up. And here now you have the situation where they do have a mental illness. What do you guys say to those individuals?
Well, I think on my part, and that's kind of what the book that I wrote in 2019 is all about, helpers and hurts. And it's not about you having to go through what your client has gone through mm-hmm. or, to be able to relate to that person's situation. I don't have to have an illness to be able to, help her develop skills, but it's to help that person understand what helps them and what hurts them. And a lot of times they want to feel like, okay, well, you don't know what it's like. But Mrs. Hansohn is, the number one person who is like the excuse remover. And that's one of her mottos, no excuses. Mm-hmm. There's no excuses to, not take care of yourself or to not do the things that can actually help you. So when people are like, well, you don't understand, it's not about understanding. It's if that person is willing to change, You know, like you said, be coachable, teachable to really reach their goals. So I would turn it back on them and say, you know, well, do you really want to help yourself? And are you serious about, you know, getting better?
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly kind of what I was thinking. But, you know, you have so many people who don't always believe in counseling. And I can honestly say that I used to be one of those people, being that I am, as you know, I've been abused. So I'm a domestic abuse survivor. And so when you go through that process, the healing part is always the hardest part. And so trying to understand the whys and the how did I get there and what happened. One thing I had to learn is the fact that it was never about me. But until you understand that, you don't improve. You know, it makes it very difficult. And I struggled with that for a long time, realizing that, you know, all these things that happened to me, that they should have never happened because I'm not that type of a woman. That was always the thing that I had to struggle with. And of course, as the years have gone on, I've realized that, you know, as we forgive ourselves, the forgiveness is truly not about that individual. It's to help you so you can continue to move on and then to learn the things that you need to have. So when you guys are going through this process and you're helping other individuals, Jodie, give me and the listeners a little more examples about what it is that you do with the awareness training that you guys provide for clientele. And then also, I would like to add on that question that, are you guys currently doing any programs that are online, virtual, or how are you guys handling today with bringing this awareness out?
So to discuss, when we teach the awareness, we talk about the challenges that different people face. And for example, a couple of the challenges that I have faced in my past were, these are very important to take note of, is counselors and doctors that were very ineffective to be able to help me, recognizing that you have to interview your doctors and your counselors, because you have some counselors that have been in practice for many, many years, and they're ineffective for you. They're not getting you to the next goal. They're not helping you progress. Some doctors are like that as well. I also in the past have dealt with a doctor who over-medicated me to the state to where I couldn't even tie my own shoes. It was so bad. Wow. That doctor did lose his license. He lost his license in several states. I had to start all over with another doctor, and to add being over-medicated and then dealing with peeling the onion, which is another thing that we teach with Miss Benjamin's counselors in residency, is peeling the onion. Again, it doesn't matter what problem you have. We each have layers. And one problem might have 40 layers to it, but you have to start with one problem at a time. And it's very important that when you have new counselors coming in, or even if you have counselors that might not have as much experience as others, that when somebody specifically has the bipolar illness, you cannot, any doctor or any counselor that is trying to help a bipolar patient who is involved in drugs and alcohol and not taking their medicine or abusing their medication, until those issues are solved, you cannot peel the onion of any layer of any issue with that client until you resolve those basic things. They can be done, and it may take years. But that is what we're trying to bring awareness for, because when you have ineffective doctors and ineffective counselors, it's not helping the client.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying, and then I'm going to have you chime in a second, but I just wanted to say that I like how you identified the fact that we as individuals have to interview our doctors and our counselors to make sure that they are a right fit. But of course, if you have an illness, sometimes you're not going to think of that. But anytime a doctor can sit there and just keep medicating you until you can't even function, I just find that repulsive, even though we know it definitely happens more and more in society, because you have these individuals who think that a pill is going to help everything, right? But as you were saying earlier, Annetta, that, you know, you definitely have to have take the medications because it balances out chemically. So Annetta, you wanted to chime in on this conversation, portion of the conversation. Please do.
Yes, and just to kind of piggyback on what Mrs. Hansohn was saying about, peeling the onion and really helping to educate the providers. And so that was one of her goals. It wasn't just about helping other clients who have the illness, but to really educate the providers, because they're on the opposite end, to know that, yes, someone can master and be successful with the illness. Because, for us counselors and providers, sometimes we do have our own stereotypes. I'm dealing with this client, so they can only go this far, or this client, has these limitations to it. And so we're trying to educate counselors and other licensed professionals and doctors, psychiatrists, that, you can hold your client accountable for more, that you don't want to limit their abilities just because of their diagnosis. So with our staff at Benjamin Counseling Center, we have 10 other clinicians, ranging with, licensed professionals, licensed social workers, residents that have their doctorate, and those who are in training to get licensed, and also graduate interns. And so Mrs. Hansohn and I collaborate to really educate them on how to work with their clients, what a healthy client looks like, what you should be expecting from your client. So that's what Mrs. Hansohn has been able to do. And then we have taken it to a larger level, where we had a presentation for the NVLTC, which is the Northern Virginia Licensed Professional Counseling Association. So Northern Virginia counselors who are licensed, and some are grad students and residents too. And we were able to present coping and succeeding with the bipolar illness from the client perspective, which I don't think people see often, because, you hear it from a clinician or a counselor, but to actually hear it from the client themselves is huge, and someone who's been successful with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're basically talking about there's no one size fit all scenario. And I think that's important for people to understand. Like you said, people do have their thought process up front. I'm used to having this person, so we know that's all they're going to need. And that's definitely the wrong attitude to have. And Jodie, you are someone who should be applauding yourself every day for the efforts that you are bringing and putting forward to everybody to learn and understand about bipolar illness, because and that I agree with you when you talk about the fact that all of us probably have some of it, but not really understanding that we do, and not knowing how to cope with it. It's important to say it's okay that you may have a mental illness, and that it's okay that you can get help. And I will, refer that, in our minority communities, we don't necessarily get looked at in that same fashion, that, we are capable of having mental illness issues. And so, I definitely, like I said, applaud both of you for what you're doing. It's amazing work ethic. And Jodie, you continue to keep doing what you're doing. I mean, it's phenomenal to hear your story for 10 years. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, wow, that's a long time. And as we said earlier, we know that every day it can continue to be a struggle, but you continue to strive and move forward. So ladies, do you have any programs, like I said, that are coming on? Are you doing anything virtually to continue to share your story, especially with the way things are today?
Well, Mrs. Hansohn and I are really collaborating, and in the process of now, just from the things I've learned from you, Kimberly, with being able to publish a book. So now I'm coaching with Mrs. Hansohn, where we're going to collaborate and write a book together about coping and succeeding with the bipolar illness. And we're hoping to have that out in the next few months, where people can purchase online, or, purchase at the office, where they can get educated about the illness, but more importantly about taking care of yourself and being able to deal with your own issues.
Wow. Well, congratulations on the book. Annetta, I love you to death. You're one of my favorite clients. She has taken the authorship to the next level. And that's exactly, as a self-publisher and an author myself, that's exactly what we look for when we work with clients, is that, the ones who are very serious about honing in on their craft and realizing that we all have a story to share. There's always somebody out there who can recognize that what they have and they see in themselves, they see in you, vice versa. So it's just amazing. And I'm just thrilled to hear this. I didn't know, so you kept this quiet. You kept this secret from me. Yes. And I see her often, Jodie. I see her often, and she never said this to me. So I definitely am happy to hear this. And, you two ladies are just, like I said, amazing, and continue to pat yourselves on the back and applaud for yourselves and continue to help those who need to be helped. And even for those who don't think they need to be helped, I'm sure there's listeners right now who are saying, this is me. And, now, how am I going to reach out? So obviously we're all here in the local area, right outside of Washington, D.C. metro area, here in the Woodbridge area. So for those who are locally listening, Annetta, could you please tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and where we can find your clinic at here in Woodbridge?
Sure. You can go to our website, which is benjamincounseling.com. And if you're interested in becoming a client or being seen by a therapist, you can just fill out the contact information on the website and it'll go directly to our staff and we'll be able to get you some help. You can also follow us on Benjamin Counseling Center through Facebook. And I also have an Instagram, which is Annetta LPC, and also a Facebook professional page, Annetta Benjamin LPC.
All right. And Ms. Jodie, do you have any contact information you would like to share with our listeners this evening as well?
My contact information is done through Mrs. Benjamin, as all my work is done in partnership with Miss Benjamin. So I would say link up, learn, and reach out to Miss Benjamin. She is the person you want to contact.
All right, ladies. Well, we have definitely come to the end of the show, and I had just been thrilled to have you both on. This has been very informative. And like I said, for those who are listening and need help, please reach out to Benjamin Counseling Center, LLC here in Woodbridge, Virginia, and ask for Miss Annetta Benjamin. And actually said it, if you can't reach out to her directly, please go to her website, fill out the page and the information so that they can reach out to you and figure out, how they can help you and provide the services you may need to have. And also, ladies, do you have any last words for our listeners this evening?
Well, I would just encourage everyone to, take some time and to really figure out, what you need to grow in and to really develop that self-awareness, because I think growth starts with understanding, what you're going through and who you are, and then you're able to change it. So, don't be afraid to, sit down and really think about where you need to grow. And then, of course, once you figure that out, you can check out the book, 5 Helpers, 5 Hurts. Right. And last year I was actually also able to publish the 5 Helpers, 5 Hurts journal. So that's both available on Amazon too.
All right. Jodie?
I would highly suggest that you get out there and get that book, 5 Helpers, 5 Hurts. I have the books. I give the books out myself. They are wonderful. If you can't get a counselor, that book can be your counselor. Miss Benjamin broke the tools down. You can write it. Journaling is the key to your success. It's the key to your health. So buy that book. It's very important.
All right. Again, ladies, I do thank you both for coming on and spending your evening with me. And for everybody else, before we close tonight's show, we definitely heard a lot about the power of therapy, friendship, and what it means to have the bipolar illness. But this also leads me to ask you, the listeners, what do you wish existed for you in 2021? Reach out to me at KimberlyWSBILC@gmail.com and let's chat about your goals. And if you want more WSBI, another night of a podcast show or a virtual live Q&A session with your favorite entrepreneur, help us raise our $5,000 so we can provide more resources for success. And you can go to www.WSBILC.com to donate. But until then, you all have a wonderful evening. We will be back next week with more amazing guests. Be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio, download our mobile app on Google Play or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a good evening. Good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.